Christianity is paganism. No, wait. Christianity is the most violent and bloody religion in the entire world. Have you ever noticed that Christians always say that Jesus is love and Jesus is forgiving, but they impose Christianity by massacring the natives of whatever land they visit? And then you show disdain because the Christians are murdering your people, slaughtering women and children for no other reason than that they look different. And if you show that disdain and fight back to save your life and your people, then these hypocritical Christians beg for mercy, saying, remember that Jesus is love, Jesus is forgiving, you need to forgive us. They appeal to you to be like Jesus, forgiving, peaceful, weak. But you know that Christians are not only violent, they are liars. Because the moment you submit to their talks of peace and turn your back on them, they take a dagger and stab you. And as you die, you wonder, if your God, your Christ, is so peaceful, loving, and honest, why are all of you Christians such violent and dishonest people? Greetings everyone, welcome back to Lamex Effects, where we use video games to reveal certain truths about the world and religion, specifically biblical religion. For now, we are using Final Fantasy X because the religion in the game resembles Catholicism. And like Catholicism, the people of this religion called Yevon are violent and are liars. In the Yevon religion, the people of Spira bow down to different gods called Aeons in hopes that these Aeons would save them from a destructive creature called sin. We are going to examine each Aeon that we see in this game and what doctrines and practices and attitudes each Aeon brings to Christianity. These attitudes come from the race that the Aeon represents. So, you want to know why Christianity is so violent. In that case, we shall examine Bahamut, the dragon of Rome. So, what do I mean when I say that Bahamut is supposed to be the spirit of Rome? What I mean is, in the game, there is a place called Bavel, which in Japanese is called Sei Beberu Kyu, which means the Holy Bavel Palace, which is resembling the Holy Roman Empire. And just like the Roman Empire, Bavel is the center and authority of religious expression in Spira. And also this place has a vast military. So in other words, this Bavel is the capital of Final Fantasy X's version of Catholicism, meaning that Bavel is supposed to be Rome. And also, Bavel is the home of Bahamut and where you can acquire this Aeon. Therefore, the dragon dwells in the place that resembles Rome. Okay, when I said that we will examine the dragon of Rome, what I meant to say is Bahamut is a dragon who just so happens to represent Rome. So by including Bahamut in a game about Christianity, Final Fantasy X is saying that Rome is in Christianity. So really what we are doing is examining Rome and how the attitudes of Rome made Christianity the violent religion that you know today. Because the Christianity that you know today was never made by Jesus Christ, but by Rome. But nevertheless, we must ask the question, why is Final Fantasy X's symbol for Rome a dragon? Well, in the previous episode, we examined the Pharisees, who are servants of Rome, and Jesus said about them in John chapter 8, verse 44, "Ye are of your father, the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So, in summary, we know that the master of the Pharisees is Rome, but Jesus Christ says that their master is the devil. The only way both of these can be true is if Rome is the devil. Well, Final Fantasy X says that Rome is a dragon, so let's connect the two thoughts. Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent called the devil and Satan, who deceiveth the whole world. So, if Final Fantasy X is calling Rome the dragon, then it is calling Rome the devil and Satan. And if Rome is the devil and Satan, then according to John chapter 8 verse 44, the Romans would be murderers and liars. So, let's get an example of Rome being a murderer and a liar, and all around being the devil, the dragon. Now, in Final Fantasy X, Bahamut, the dragon, displays many Roman symbolisms. The dragon looks like an eagle, and the eagle is a national symbol of Rome. It also has a disc on its back that resembles the sun, and the Romans worship the sun, with Sunday being the most holy day of the week for them. And just like Final Fantasy X gives us symbolism to tell us that the dragon represents Rome, the Bible does as well. In Revelation chapter 12 verse 4, it says, "The dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born." Most Christians know that the child represents Jesus, the Christ, but few know that the woman represents Jerusalem. For in Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 2, it says that God likens Zion to a comely and delicate woman. And also it says earlier in this chapter that the woman had 12 stars at her head, which represents the 12 tribes of Israel. And in this Jerusalem, the devil waited to kill the Christ who was prophesied to be born in her. In Jerusalem, there was a Roman king, a great dragon called Herod the Great. And wise men came to visit him in Matthew chapter 2 verse 2, saying, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him." When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. For Herod knew the prophecies of the Messiah. For according to Acts chapter 26 verse 3, the Roman rulers had to be expert in all customs and questions which are among the Jews. And if there was any question of what Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and the Psalms of David said about Christ, then Herod knew the answer. And well, the answer terrified him. So he went and gathered all the priests who had conformed to Roman rule, traitors of their race, who would tell Rome all the secrets of the Jews, and probably were the ones to teach Herod these prophecies. Verse 4, "And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born." So, in verse 6, his teachers told him that the Christ was to be born in Jerusalem. And verse 7, "Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. Therefore, Herod knew where Christ was born and his general age." Now, with that information, what did Herod do? He claimed to worship Christ, he claimed to want to worship Christ at least, and told the wise men to return and tell him where the Christ was so he could. But the wise men did not return. And verse 16, "Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of these wise men. For Herod, the great dragon, had only one goal: to devour the Christ as soon as he was born. But Herod was not the only Roman ruler to display the tendencies of the dragon. So, after the Romans had conquered Greece a few hundred years prior, that's when Rome gained possession of Greece's Judaic slaves. And to keep these slaves pacified, the Romans established scribes and Pharisees to teach a version of their religion that would keep them loyal to the Caesars. It would sound just close enough to Judaism to keep them quiet, but ultimately it kept them as slaves. But then Jesus came and started to teach the Bible in the way that Moses taught it, because according to study.com, Christianity was not a new religion. In fact, the early Christian church was firmly planted with Judaism at its very root structure. So, to be more accurate, we should really say Rome was rocked by a group of Jewish believers who followed Jesus Christ, another Jewish man. And the Pharisees feared the fact that Christ taught the law, saying to themselves in John chapter 11 verse 48, "If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation." The Pharisees were the pastors of the Jews. If Christ caused them to return to the commandments, the Romans would take the Pharisees' place in society, their wealth, their status. But in addition to all that, the Romans would take their nation by violence. If the Pharisees failed to control Judaism, then the Romans would put an end to it by killing the people. And in 70 AD, Nero, a Roman king, sent Titus Vespasian, his Roman general, to deal with these Christians, because the Christians taught God's laws. Now, at this time, all the Christians, without exception, practiced Judaism. And because of this, the Christians went to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. So, when they came, Titus locked the Christians inside Jerusalem and sieged the city. All Jews were killed whether you were allied with Christ or Caesar. And so, the Romans, the devil, made war with those Christians. He made war with Jews who kept the commandments of God's Passover and the testimony of Jesus. Incidentally, this is another description of the dragon in Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. "And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ." Therefore, Rome went on a rampage. In Acts chapter 18, Claudius Caesar ordered that all Jews were to leave Rome. And even in Luke chapter 21, verse 24, Jesus Christ warned them that during this time, flee, get out of Jerusalem, go anywhere else, but whatever you do, don't stay and don't fight Rome. Many apostles during this time were executed, others were banished, but many were tortured. And any who were stupid enough not to listen to Christ and to defend themselves and fight Rome, these were put into colosseums and made into gladiators, where all the Romans made a sport of watching these Jewish warriors die. If you want to know more about the gladiators, I found this video here. And because the Romans continued to kill the apostles until there was none left, after about 100 years, one of the last teachers who taught as the apostles did was Polycarp. But he too died. And a prophecy in the Bible came to pass. For it said in Amos chapter 8 verse 11, "Behold, the days come, saith the Lord God, that I will send a famine in the earth, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. And during this time, when the Bible was no longer taught properly, and no one heard the word of the Lord, in 193 AD, a man named Septimius Severus took the throne. He was recorded as the first African to rule Rome, and he was an evil man, raised up in the paganism that the apostles tried to keep at bay. And if you want to learn more about this so-called first African to rule Rome and his effect on the Christian church, you can watch this video up here. It is a very long video, so I suggest you open up your computer, turn it on in the background, and listen to it while you play a game that doesn't take much focus, like Final Fantasy X. But for the purposes of us and this video, you must know this. Septimius Severus is the predecessor of Constantine, and Constantine wanted to unite the Romans with Christianity. So, for those of you who did not understand, Herod was the dragon that stood at Jerusalem to devour Christ. He is the devil and Satan. And as Satan, he lied to the wise men, saying he wanted to worship the Christ, and he murdered an entire city in hopes to kill Christ. Nero and Titus also wanted to slaughter the Jews who followed Christ. And the Bible says in Ecclesiastes chapter 10 verse 2, as the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. This means that if the rulers of Rome, like Herod, Nero, and Titus, were liars and murderers, then all the Romans are liars and murderers, because your leader shows who you are. And so, Christianity under Constantine was created to appeal to men like Herod, Nero, and Titus. That is why Christianity does the same, why they are known for being liars and murderers. But also, if the Romans are the devil, then in order to appeal to them, Christianity would have to be full of devil worship. So, next time we will see how Constantine made and added many customs that were known to be satanic and put them in Christianity. Next time on Lamex Effects.